Victoria 3 Dev Diary #1, Pops. What is Pops about? It's about how they look, what they belong to, the whole data that you get together with Pops, how you can use them and how they will challenge you. What is so cool that they start with Pops? So it signals something. It signals that it is a bottom-up game. So you have two types of games in simulations. You have top-down and you have bottom-up games. Bottom-up games start with microeconomics and lead it to macroeconomics. And this is basically a scaled-up microeconomics, and microeconomics is a lot more solid than macroeconomics. And so this is a really solid foundation. If you start from the Pops, just about anything can happen. But it usually feels much more alive. And it's also important because Pops had something very specific in the Victorian times. Why was that? Like in medieval times, before that, you usually had people that had a couple of jobs. Even someone like that was really a farmer had a couple of jobs in addition to that. Had to make some craftsmanship for his liege, had to make this, had to make that, had to cook there, had to deliver things from there to there. So the specialization wasn't that distinct, but in the Victorian times, also due to the increased possibility to travel from the railways alone, and from the road building, and from all kinds of things like that, from the steamboats, you had an increased specialization, and so you had many more different jobs and also a lot more different classes. And the classes really made up a lot because, as you know, in medieval times, usually there was something called, there was some kind of class democracy. Hard to describe, but you usually had something like clergy, something like common folk, and something like nobles in early parliaments. And what they did was they came together and tried to get to an opinion that was good for all of them, and then they went to the king or to the ruler and said, "Hey, we wanted to do like this." And usually the king would say, "Okay, I have a couple of amends there to make, but in principle that's good." So, and the people that led these groups were usually very powerful. So they were the first politicians. That's another class that basically came from here. They came from a job and then they became basically politicians, especially for that job, the representatives. And what we see here is basically the representatives for that job. We have the Pops. Every Pop is visualized, as you can see here, for the demographic group. You have a French Catholic clergyman here. He's male, of course, and he spots a very nice attire, and he's financially secure from his living conditions. He's secure. So you, the player, might be in charge of the country, but you're not in charge of the Pops, and you cannot manipulate them directly. Yet everything you do to the country affects them, and they in turn will react what they perceive to be their own best interests. So probably increasing their well-being, so increasing their supply with goods. A large part of your game will consist of trying to sate your population's appetites for material goods or political reform, just like in material goods, like in Anno, political reform, that's something expanding on that, right? That's the wiki thing. That's the special thing. Most actions you will take aren't to the benefit of every Pop in your nation, and by making life better for one part of the population, you may inadvertently upset another demographic. It's about balancing it. It's about a compromise, or it's about choosing who your allies are and catering only to them and making them powerful. The most important aspect of Pops are their professions, which reflects the types of jobs it carries out in the building where they work. So they have a place, a rough place. Like there in a state there is the buildings, and there they go to work. A pop's profession determines its social class and can affect its wages, political strength, what other professions it might qualify for, and particularly which political interest groups it's prone to supporting, which you will hear lots more about in future dev diaries, he writes. Some of the pop professions you will encounter in Victoria 3 are aristocrats, capitalists, bureaucrats, officers, shopkeepers, machinists, very important, also from the time, laborers and peasants. Investing in industries that provide job opportunities for the kinds of professions you want to encourage in your country is key to the society-building gameplay of Victoria 3. So you can invest in industries. In some cases you can directly build the industries. For example, if you have communism, it's probably no problem. And that will influence what kind of society you get. So the pops themselves and their professions will influence the society that you get. Every variation of profession, culture, religion and workplace in the world get their own unique pop. At any given time, this results in many tens of thousands of pops in the world working, migrating, procreating and agitating. As you see, we have someone here, secure. He gets something from subsistence farms. He lives in the state of Diyarbakir here in the Turkish culture. Religion Sunni, 50% literacy of that class, if we can say that. There is some kind of discrimination here. None of them are radicals or loyalists. They have an interest group with a symbol here. They have a certain political strength and they have a certain net income. And belongs to the aristocrats in the Ottoman Empire. So you can see that from the attire, from the clothing. Very, very well off. I think that headdress was also something really special back then. Wealthy landowners, old money with old connections. As owners of farms and plantations, they contribute some of their profits to the investment pool. Their political interests are represented as the landowners. They are part of the upper class. Aristocrats in the Ottoman Empire are of a population of 244,000. Their political strength is 1.55 million. And if you think these numbers should be similar, that's probably the thing of the average political power would be one pop has one political strength, and you can see extrapolate that. From the population, these guys have roughly 6 times the political strength of a normal average pop. We have aristocrats in Ottoman empires. What do they support? They support local governors, 75%, armed forces, around 18%, Sunni madrasas, 5%, and other interest groups, 2%. So only pops with adequate wealth can become aristocrats. Potential increases with greater wealth and to a lesser degree literacy. Pops whose culture faces discrimination take a much longer time. So they have it harder even if they have a lot of capital. Officers and bureaucrats have a particularly easy time becoming aristocrats because they are working for the state. And in the end, the state in that time and age determined mostly what class you could belong to. So the people that make up a pop are distinguished into the workforce and the dependents. Members of the workforce keep the buildings in the game operational and collect a wage from them in return. Those who cannot or aren't permitted to be officially employed are considered dependents. They collect only a small income from odd jobs and government programs. So they are not part of the productive workforce, but rather they work in things that are not paid by the workforce, like childcare, like the typical help jobs, things like that. Even though that was also the beginning of childcare organizations. So the Victorian age, at least the late Victorian age, you had the beginnings of childcare there, but of course mothers were really in a bad position. In a bad position back then still. In a very bad position. So laws affect who is included in each category. At the game start, most countries do not accept women working and collecting a wage outside the home, but by reforming laws governing the rights of women, more dependent pops will enter the workforce over time. So if you don't have enough workforce, one method is to give the women the rights to work. By abolishing child labor, the amount of income dependents will bring home will decrease, but will make it easier to educate your populace. So if you abolish child labor, the children can go to the education system, and then they will be a better workforce with higher literacy. After a bloody war, many dependents of soldiers may be left without sufficient income, and you may decide to institute pensions to help your population recover. Dependents basically have then one very important job, and that important job is probably the growth, the procreation. In short, nothing in your country runs without pops, and everything about your country affects those pops, who in turn provide new opportunities and challenges during your tumultuous journey through the Victorian era and beyond. You can ally some pop groups, you can have some pop groups that will totally hate you, or you can try to make all pop groups equally happy, which is probably extremely hard. In the next dev diary, Martin Wiz Anward will return to explain something quite central to the game capacities. But I'm really looking forward to Victoria from that reason alone, that they started with pops, because it's bottom-up economy, and that is usually a very good sign. Thank you for watching, and happy gaming to you. We'll see each other in another one of these dev diaries or on the channel. What was your favorite thing about this? And what did you not like so much? That's what I also wanted to ask. So what I like is that it starts with pops. And the pops, it's a bottom-up economy. What I don't really like that much is that if you look at that screen, it's a UI that is kind of hard to read and disorganized, even though it has a lot of info that I really like. I'm not really sure if there's really all the info here. So I'm a little bit skeptical, I think, but I'm also looking forward to it because of that. Early footage under development, so I'm optimistic this will be improved over time. And I think the same it is with the maps. And at least I hope that. I know that many people criticize the maps, but it's a very early version. And especially graphically, a lot will be done, I'm pretty sure. Graphics is a lot of work as well. So I'm looking forward also to improvements to some of the screenshots. And I'm really curious how the game will look in the end. Have a great time until next time, and happy gaming. This is Immanuel Can, signing out. See you soon, and happy gaming.